Good afternoon, everyone. You are welcome to today's presentation. And I am optimistic that today will surely work for us, as this is the second time we are trying to have this presentation due to internet challenge. I welcome you all to this wonderful activity today. And I will just quickly start by introducing our center to you, the Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies. We have our bi-monthly presentation. For this time, this is a special one, which we have been looking forward to from a great scholar. Our center was started about 2.5 years ago through TED Fund, Seed Fund, to be focused on issues related to migration and global studies. And since then, the center has been presenting series of cases, producing journals, and other research activities. It is located in the National Open University of Nigeria, and our Vice Chancellor, Professor Olufemi Peters, is very passionate about the center, and for it to succeed, he gives the center the maximum cooperation. And I am the director of the center, and I'm Gloria Neto. So I'm welcoming you specially to today's event. The vision of the center is to bridge the gap between humanity and the future. And the mission is to provide sustainable leverage for interdisciplinary research in migration and global studies. And our core values include integrity, inclusion, diversity, service, and participatory. And of course, we have some mandates, which I will just list a few of them, to provide leverage for field-based and solution-driven research, to serve as agents of national policy for migration and global studies, to seek grants for academic activities and outreach of sustainability, to publish and sustain peer-reviewed academic journal and monograph series, to collaborate with stakeholders in the field of migration, global studies, and policymakers, to organize occasional seminars, conferences, and public lectures in migration and global issues, amongst others. So we are actually performing one of the main mandates of this center by having this presentation this afternoon. And our presenter today is Professor Michael Kwanache. I'm going to talk briefly about his I'm going to tell you briefly about his bio data, a very abridged one, because if we are to read the bio data of such a scholar, we may not start this event today. So very briefly, he studied, he had his first degree in economics from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. And he also went further to study in Northwestern University, Evanston, USA. He had his PhD, where he had his master's and his PhD in McGill University, Montreal, Canada. Professor Kwanache taught various undergraduate and postgraduate courses in economics and has supervised and inspired many undergraduate and postgraduate students, mainly at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. He served as the president of the Nigerian Economic Society from 1999 to 2001 and was honored with the fellowship of the Society, FNES 2007. He was the president of the Academy of the Social Science from 2003 to 2005 and was honored with its fellowship. He is a fellow of the Institute of Management Consultants. Apart from his numerous research outputs and publications, he has held a number of administrative positions. From 1998 to 2003, he was the Foundation Director, Institute for Development Research, Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. From 2002 to 2003, he was the Director of the Independent Policy Group, Policy Think Tank, of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and became the special advisor in economic and social affairs to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in the office of the Vice President. From 2012 to 2018, he was a Vice Chancellor, Veritas University, Abuja. He's currently a professor of economics, Veritas University, Abuja, Nigeria. This is how far we can go so that we take this beautiful presentation he's going to have with us today, which is titled The Political Economy of Globalization, Migration Nexus. So I have the great pleasure of welcoming Professor Michael Kwanache to this presentation today. Prof. Sir, you are most welcome, and over to you to give us your laudable presentation. You have been given permission to share your screen. You are welcome, sir.
Very obvious phenomenon that has captivated the world and that is creating some level of anxiety among peoples in developing countries. And that is the issue of migration. How we'll find our citizens. Recently, they returned some Nigerians from Libya. We hear of a number of our citizens dying in the desert, being treated shabbily in Libya as they try to find their way to Europe. And you wonder why a society like Nigeria, as developed as Nigeria, why we have increasing number of our population trying to go to Europe, or not just Europe. Actually, the Nigerian migration seems to go to any country that is willing to take us, from South Africa to China to the Middle East, you name it. Nigerians are trying to get themselves into those countries. And one must sit down and begin to wonder whether the traditional explanations, whether the traditional theories about migration, both internal and external, still holds. Whether we can rely on the push-pull model, which is the most famous, the classical model that it's a gap between the living standards in one part of the world and the other. And as the third world, as the condition in the third world deteriorate and the condition in the developed north escalates, the difference becomes wider and wider, and people tend to respond to that. It's said to be irrational behavior. People migrate out of choice. The theory says you vote with your feet. You move to where you believe you are better off. They say that is a rational choice, that individuals make that rational choice. And therefore, there is really nothing to worry about people moving from one state to the other. That context also seems to be aggravated by the development of the global economy in recent times. And we keep on wondering, why migration, let me clarify that migration has different forms and that the dynamics behind the various forms differ. Economic migrants, refugees, people who move out of illegal acts, all those have different dynamics. The dynamics behind them are different. Basically, what we are looking at, maybe to clarify the conversation, is economic migrants. People who, on their own volition, leave a location to the other. Either they are seasonal migrants, like pastoralists who have to move with the season and revolve round, or they are people who simply want, because there's better job in Ghana, just move to Ghana and stay there because they want to trade. They go to Ghana and stay there for years, and virtually, you can't tell the difference between them and the Ghana. It's important to make that point because the dynamics and the theory seems to vary a little bit as you move from one type of migration to the other. Our topic, though, today is to look at the nexus between globalization and migration. And as I try to get my slide moving, if I know how, I just press that. Okay. We'll begin by just a broad introduction, which is basically what I'm doing, trying to set the context, trying to set the grounds for our conversation. We look at what globalization itself is. Actually, you'll be surprised that the definition of globalization seems to, the literature is just full with different characterizations. The sociologists have one definition, the economists, the geographers, people just have different focus. They normally focus on one particular characterization of globalization, but we want to spend a little bit of time properly, or not properly, at least characterize it within our own context to address the issue we're interested in. We're interested in the issue of migration. We want to understand what migration is all about. And I want to look at the combination of both. What is the nexus? How are they related? How does one react, impact on the other? And where is actually the point of convergence? Just a brief discussion on that. But actually, this presentation is in the Nigerian context. Because again, as you move from one country to the other, as you move from one part of the world to the other, you see slightly different dynamics. Dynamics are basically the same, but you see slightly different dynamics. And we look at the political economy of it, because there are classical views about how these things happen. There are orthodox views of looking at it. But my approach is basically political economy, and I want to interpret what I would describe above in the political economic context. And then we'll conclude. Globalization has transformed the world. I think we can't deny that. We can't complain that the way that the present epoch of globalization, when compared to the previous epoch of globalization, has been very profound. It has had profound impact on our existence. It has driven up economic well-being global. If you look at the global index, the world has been growing. So globalization is something good from that perspective. Even if in this conversation, I tend to give the impression that globalization is not too good for some people in the world. I think most academics, most intellectuals will argue that if you look at whatever index of development you apply, that the world economy and the world society, let's say since the Second World War, we normally characterize the post-Second World War as the present epoch, although people are also trying to even segment it by saying that the era of the fourth industrialization is actually where we start, which is a little bit more recent. But I think most scholars will go back to the Second World War. But why? Because the post-Second World War, why my take-off point is that the post-Second World War created the structures and the power relations that underline our present existence. That's actually where it started. After the war, a number of victorious countries met together and said, you know what, we should prevent another world war. Let's come together. Let's try to form some consensus as to how we move the world forward. You know what happened? After that, the Americans and the Russians never agreed, so Russia went its way. And we actually have a tripod. The global power structure was not just as a tripod. It was the Western world led by the United States and European countries, the Soviet Union then with its own allies, and then the non-aligned nations. The non-aligned nations were very weak. They were third world countries, developing countries who said, look, we take from you, we take from right, we take from left. So we don't want to tie ourselves to right or left. And the world should allow us to be non-aligned. So you have non-aligned countries, and they met, of course, they had their own meetings, they tried to articulate their position. So that was the tripod we had after the Second World War. The point, because you say I'm in a political economic approach, I have to emphasize that because the power relations at the global level, started manifesting itself at that point. We don't want to go into that history because that's actually not our concern. But the point of emphasizing that is that no matter how we look at power relations, global power relations, we have to look at it within the context of the emergence of three supposedly world powers. And again, as I said, the second one is not really a world power. So my presentation, as I say, is based on a world system perspective. It's not it's not based on classical migration theory. It's based on world system. And what is the world system perspective? The world system basically says that we normally do our analysis from the point of the nation state. The nation state is very, very important because you have laws, you have regulations, you have a standing army to protect your territory. The nation state ordinarily is the unit of analysis. Look at instances like this from a nation state perspective. The world system perspective says, listen, the world is coming together so much that nothing happens within a country that is not influenced by other countries, by the world itself. And so if you focus too much on individual countries, you will miss the big picture. And people are saying, see, what globalization has done is emphasize the big picture, whether we like it or not. And in this conversation, I hope I'll be able to point out how that has become inevitable, how peripheral countries, whether they like it or not, must follow. I don't want to go historically how we got to the point where we are today. But so people like me will say, look, the nation state is very important. Even if I look at the Nigerian case, when I look at the Nigerian context, the nation state is very important. But if anybody thinks that what happens in Nigeria is decided in Nigeria and Nigeria alone, he must be ready for the surprise. So that is my perspective. That is the context within which I want to interrogate this subject matter, which is actually looking at the nexus between globalization and migration. What is the pillar of this perception? Is that the world is, I think I want to trace a little bit before I even get to the present structure, why I'm using just a bipolar structure, rather than the three-leg structure that I said resulted from the Second World War. But even the world system perspective normally says, look, we know that when you talk of two power blocks, there are always in between. Many countries, it's a spectrum. It's not it's not a bipolar type of situation. Although if you go back historically, people will say no, it was bipolar during the Cold War, because apparently completely the capitalist system, the American Western culture was diagrammatically challenged by the Soviet system, and it was bipolar. It's either you're in one or the other, or you are non-aligned. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we had a unipolar world. And the power, so when you talk of power relations, you're talking of the superpower, the Western world, again, championed by the United States, and literally every country was just supposed to dance around them. It was unipolar, but yet with enough space for groups to emerge, not that they could address or counter that world power. But what I've noticed recently is that with the rise of China, China is growing very, very fast and is growing on global influence. The apparent resurgence of Soviet Union and the middle-income countries, that power structure is no longer as defined as it was, at the end of the Soviet Union. We normally say that the wall of American hegemony that was almost invincible after the collapse of the Soviet Union has again come to a point where it has to struggle and contest for global power. I think I'm spending too much time in trying to explain what the power relations is all about and why the whole concept of power relations is very, very critical for our discussion this morning. Internally, it's the same thing. It's very, very simple. The same power structure manifests itself in third world countries, virtually in every country. We operate a system, again, Western style, where 5% of Nigerians control everything that happens in the country. And 95% of Nigerians are just onlookers. And what happens to these onlookers depends on the power game. You see what is happening in our country today. We really don't know where we are going because the power struggle, is so intense. to the extent that they have to go to London to meet. We are here in Nigeria worrying about inflation, worrying about, they are meeting in London to decide what happens to this country. So that power division is there, not only globally, but also nationally. We are not going to discuss, we are not, you see, my perspective does not really give me time to go into the Nigerian situation. The Nigerian situation is only relevant to the extent that it looks at the nexus between globalization but just as you critique the global system, so also do you have, challenges within. And people will tell you, I mean, the literature will make it very, very clear that migration issue than it is international. Although the international issue is more talked about, is more graphic. You see refugees moving from one country to the other. You see poverty. You see people dying in the sea. You see people dying in the desert, and it's traumatic, right? But the literature says, listen, most of the migration that happens actually happens within nations, within parts of the nation, than globally. And the statistics I tried to supply some of them. Again, looking at the slide before, is simply looking at how this divide has developed. You see how it, and the fourth industrial revolution is my point of saying that look, whatever happened in the last 20 years is getting, in terms of the cleavage, in terms of the gap, is getting even wider and wider because of the fourth industrial revolution. The marginalization of third world countries is going to intensify. And while up to this point, we had the point of the comparative advantage of labor, brute force, to work in industry, to work in plantation, the global economy in the fourth industrial revolution is going in a completely different direction. Robotics, 3Ds, different form of fossil fuel, alternative energy, automation, drones, all these things, artificial intelligence, all these things is just simply saying, see, your brute force, your labor, your farm, your whatever it is that is sustaining primitive economy is virtually going to be dumped in the bin of history, because that is not the way the world is going. And that is very, very frightening. That if the fourth industrial revolution actually holds on, and we operate digital economies, we operate, robotics, we operate artificial intelligence, where will the peripheral countries be? Because all these things I'm mentioning are in the monopoly of vested interests that are themselves domiciled in the north. And the gap between the north and the south will continue to expand. And if we are saying that that gap is responsible to a large extent to economic migration, you can then imagine what the situation will be. Let me just say, as I try to leave this issue, that in classical economy, we started with three factors of production: land, labor, and capital. We said in the first epoch, land was very, very, because ownership of land and agrarian society, that was a very critical. We moved to the next stage of our development, where it was to a large extent labor. Labor unions were very, very strong in the United States, in the industrial economy, in the industrial society. That was it, that the human energy was necessary to push industrialization. But in all those, even in classical economics, we say that the rate of returns to each of those factors determine what they take out of the production process. And from that time, it was clear to everybody that capital was in the best position to extract the greater returns. And historically, it has been like that. And in part of this conversation, you see me moving with the distinction between capital and labor. And I talk of capital in very broad, open sense. And I talk of the hegemony of capital and the oppressiveness of capital. And even sometimes the greed of capital. Basically, what I'm saying, in those points, I use capital as vested interest, those who own capital, those who control wealth, and those who can use those wealth to influence what happens in the nation. And labor is simply as the proletariat, and most people who just wake up in the morning, work, earn a living, and just keep on reproducing themselves. The central thesis of this conversation, before I move out of that, let me just get that very clear. So once you get my central thesis, then the rest of this conversation just goes around that. And at the end of the day, you want to see whether I have made my point or I haven't made. What really am I after? Our central thesis is that understanding the dynamics of globalization within the context of the world system provides a useful insight to the nexus between globalization and migration. It provides a proper appreciation of the dynamics of power relations defined by the global north, which manifests itself in the nature of international and international migration in this epoch of world history. So that is it. That is all. I'll spend the rest of this hour trying to, not to convince you, but lay the framework or lay the ground for the conversation around, migration and globalization. Again, I think I've gone most of this slide. I've talked about the rise of China. I think what the point I want to take from here is that no matter how you define globalization, an aspect of it that is important for us, that globalization has defined a new international division of labor. And it gives competitive advantage to regions with high skills and quality labor, right? Digital economy and innovation in financial markets has created the opportunity for skill. I'm making this point now because later in our conversation, I'll be making the point that I'm sure many of you would have seen the analysis that if you take migrant societies, migrant community in the United States, the most educated and the most skilled are Nigerian, is the Nigerian community. Because I read that, the first time I saw that report, I had to pause a little bit and think about it. That if you take all the migrant communities in the United States, and they did the analysis, that the Nigerian community is above average in every index, well, whatever it is. Well, I'm sure they're talking of the middle class, not the top class. But I can't even say that I won't be surprised if that is also included. But they looked at it. How many of them are educated? How many of them have PhDs? How many of them are working top? If you look at migrant society, Nigeria was on top, not one of the on top. They are far above the American average. Far. Their own average is far. So you can say, well, this selective. Those people who can go to the United States and stay there. You can say the skilled and the elites intellectually in third world countries. They're the ones who can go and stay there. But that is very instructive. It's instructive because today it brings out one of the I won't say hidden part of globalization that we don't focus on. And that is the globalization of the labor market. What gave the nation states the power to control, to a very large extent, the globalization process is their ability to restrict movement out of the nation state. You can't, well, now we have ECOWAS, so I can just get into a bus and go to Togo, the next country, or to Cameroon. But in the past, I can't do that. I need a permit. I need a permit to leave. I need a permit to enter. But now you can't do that with Western countries. You can't just wake up tomorrow without a visa, without anything. You say you're going to the United States. They check who is coming and they check who they will take. Look, in our own mindset, we go back to the original conversation. Why is it in the three factors of production I mentioned initially? Why is it that the neoliberal Western American-led Western ideology seems to insist that capital should be mobile? In other words, they've so much convinced us that we're looking for foreign direct investment. We want foreign capital to come in here to develop us. Capital can move anywhere. Capital knows no color. Capital knows no creed. Capital does not know anything. Capital has no religion. It has no morality. It has no culture. Capital is neutral. So capital can move anywhere. How did we arrive at that? Capital can move anywhere. Remember, I'm not talking of just the fiscal. I'm talking of the power. But labor cannot move. Why didn't they allow labor to move? And believe you me, all the poor people in this country will put them in a boat and ship them to America. If they think that capital can move, why can't labor move? And that debate has always been there. But it's not a debate that up to now people have been able to confront. And the literature, article of the World Bank literature are looking at, so if that had happened, 50%, he says, that report says, of third world country origins will not be where they are. 50%, he says, 50% of them will be in the West. So we have that problem. But the point I'm just trying to make now is that what I've just said at the end of that globalization has defined a new international division of labor, right? And even in this financial thing, many people will tell you that Nigerians, although in a negative sense, have devised a way of basically beating the financial system. And now we are running after Yahoo boys all over the place. We are complaining that Nigerians in the United States are swindling people by doing all sorts of crazy things. But it just tells you that rigidness that we used to pretend that existed is getting weaker. And why is it getting weaker? Because of the openness of globalization, because globalization is expanding. Again, the issue of globalization at the various sides, that slide gives you on and on, because it's important to, the whole essence of this is to actually explore the dynamics. Globalization is not just a word, a fanciful word. It has implications. Most of the time we use it as if it's a fad, but it's not a fad, it has implications. And that slide tries to give you some of the implications of that process. That it's a very profound process, and that it's developing a global culture. It's developing a global perceptive. It's developing even a global moral and ethical standard. It's developing so many things that in the past we don't expect will go beyond traditional society or the nation state. Globalization is doing that. Okay, the point I want to take from this slide is the second to the last, that globalization has created non-state power bases outside the control of any nation state. I mean, that's worrying, right? Because with the nation states, you can put political pressure on the state. Again, we'll come to it when we come to Nigeria, where we begin to notice non-state actors. When we come to notice ungoverned spaces and non-state actors literally taking over the country. It started from globalization, and legitimately too, not illegitimately. Because what is happening is that while states when you go to the United Nations, everybody is equal, all the heads of states go there, they make their speeches, they go. The real force that has been foisted on the world by globalization is actually in the hands of non-state actors. But the point we make from that last point is that those non-state actors are themselves validated by the states, because they are non-state actors, extremely wealthy, but they can't protect their property rights. Somebody has to protect their property rights. They don't have judiciary, they don't have ministry, they don't have security. So they must depend on some state to provide those services for them, which they pay for. Very easily they pay for it. Even in this country, if you want private security, you can actually get private security if you can pay for it to get it. But the point is that these non-state actors are so powerful that they can interfere with local politics of weaker states. I want you to note that, because when we come to the Boko Haram crisis in Nigeria, when we come to those contradictions within our states, most people think it's an outcome of internal evolution, but it's not. This perspective says that no matter how you look at it, it could be part of the globalization process. It could be part of the hegemonic controllers of the world system trying to ensure that countries that have the potential, ability, and rights to emerge do not emerge. Of course, they can't do it alone. They must do it with internal collaborators. And it's very easy for them to get internal, and they have a lot of internal collaborators. Again, as I said, I was very disheartened last week when the major political candidates in this country had to go and meet in London. Why are they meeting there? Why do we have to articulate our position to say we went there not for politics, we went there to build elite consensus? Why can't you build elite consensus here in Nigeria? Yes, this country is moving towards, we are facing an existential threat, there's no doubt. Anybody who is following what's happening in Nigeria, we are facing an existential threat. But some of us, the world system people believe that it is not just internal dislocation. A big part of it is external, and that we want to look at the nexus between domestic power and foreign power. I think that's the point I just want to make from that. Now, let's quickly look at migration. Again, I won't spend a lot of time here. I think I've established the base. For us, maybe for our conversation, yes, people are moving in out of Nigeria, people are moving into Nigeria. There are reasons why they're moving in, there are reasons why they're moving out. Most of the literature will tell you, at least the classical literature will tell you, if salary this in Ghana is double what paid in Nigeria, lecturers will try to go to that. And then just come at the weekend to see their family. They're not going to sit down here when there's a better condition of service in Ghana or in the next country, and they are not willing to pay the same. They will migrate, they'll move with their feet. It will be difficult initially, but if you want them to move, they'll move. They'll go to South Africa, they'll go to East Africa. So this classical literature is there that we know those variables, those factors that would make people to move. That slide simply gives you some of the information, and even this also says the same thing. That migration is basically caused by push and pull. And that is standard, type of thing you get from the literature. And of course, the world system said even based on the old classical theories, and that's the second point I will just emphasize. It's again part of my central message, because that theory says that international migration is nothing but a byproduct of global capitalism. Once you take that, you see how it dovetails to our initial condition. I think we can leave that. Now let's look at the next, because that is important thing. Globalization is wonderful. Globalization of weakness, blah, blah, blah. Migration is inevitable. People will move. People must move. And there are various factors, right, that make people move. But what we are interested in is seeing how these two things inevitably work. We said that globalization causes migration. And migration contributes to the intensification of social, economic, and political relations across borders. Okay, so there is that dual relationship. But still, globalization as a process ridden with contradictions. Okay, everything on that slide is commentary. The rich have many assets, the poor have only one, their labor. That is the World Bank. And it's surprising. I love the World Bank quotation here, because if you listen to me attentively, you see I'm against neoliberals and against the global governance structure for globalization. What is the governance structure? At the point, people say, well, globalization is misbehaving because unlike nation states, it's not properly governed. There's no governance structure. So global capital just does what it wants. They just roam around the whole place causing trouble. No. After the Second World War, the attempt to restructure Europe established 3 institutions, and those institutions are still today the governance structure for globalization, at least in the formal sense, in the sense that they can influence, what happens as it relates to major actors in this arena. The World Bank says the rich have many assets, the poor have only one, their labor. Because good jobs are slow to come by to the poor must move to find productive employment, right? Migration is therefore the most effective way to reduce poverty and share prosperity. And that is the whole thrust of globalization. Is to facilitate what? Is to facilitate prosperity through technology, through the fourth industrial revolution, through digitalization, but that is it. That's all globalization is all about. Creating a global social order where everybody conforms through the internet and through communications. But the point the World Bank is making here is that you can do all that, but intrinsic in that, linked to that, is the fact that migration is the most effective way to reduce poverty and share prosperity. People must move. People must migrate if they want to share the prosperity that globalization. That is the link. That is the north. People must move. Even the World Bank, as conservative as it is in the modern time being able to realize this. All development experiences and growth episodes in history has involved the relocation of labor across space and sectors within countries. Basically, what he's saying is that you couldn't have had development or growth in history without movement of persons. People must move. People have moved in history. Migration is an integral part of the growth and development process. That's basically the point they're making. Some of the biggest gain, however, came from the movement of people between countries. That's international migration. Because the classical thing looks at this movement within a country, within a nation state, and how people move from one part, from the rural area to the urban area, and how that is actually a characterization of development as people move from the rural area to the urban area. So we are going back to basics, and we're tying it in. I said that, look, there have never been any development experience or growth episodes in history that did not involve the movement of people. And as the World Bank is stating in this quote, migration, international migration, have become even more important than domestic migration. As the epoch modernizes, initially it was easy to just move from rural and urban areas, but as the system modernizes, you need the outside movement. I just want to make the point that there's a difference between economic migrants and refugee. I think I started my introduction to that, and so that, look, most of the point is economic migrants. But why do I need to bring in the refugees at all? I'm going to bring the refugees very soon when I talk of weaponization of migration. How people are now weaponizing migration. What used to be a historically peaceful phenomenon is now highly weaponized. And in that case, we're going to look at the pastoralists, we are going to look at the harder farmers, we are going to look at a number of things. And we are going to ask ourselves, because the way Nigerians are looking at those things is sometimes one feels uncomfortable. Again, if you look at my perspective, what I'm afraid of is the weaponization of that process. Migration is a historical thing. Movement of people across West Africa predates the existence of Nigeria. People have been moving. So nobody's afraid of or surprised about migration. But what we are afraid of now is the weaponization of migration. I want to bring in the issue of refugees, instead of just leaving it at economic migrants. Again, as you say, as I've already explained, refugees are people who have to move. They don't necessarily make it a choice. You see what is happening in Ukraine today. They are bombing Ukraine. They are bombing people. People are migrating, but people are staying. Some people are staying, and not some people. I'm so surprised that Kiev is still. People are still moving around, having Independence Day celebration, and people are staying. The choice to move can be yours, but the necessity to move might not be yours. And that is what has happened to migrants, internal displaced people, IDP camps we have in Nigeria, and we have to interrogate the IDP camps. They are also migrating. They are migrating. As anybody who moves, it doesn't matter whether it's seasonally or temporarily, but you move from the above to a different one and stay there for a reasonable length of time. You have migrated. The overall complexity of international migration is attributable to more respect to the crisis of globalization in third world country. Again, the point I think one has been making. Now let's look at the Nigerian context. That's like simply tells you, see, the point I'm trying to make here is that Nigeria is not a poor country. Let's face it. I was happy last week when second quarter data for Nigeria came out. Everybody thought we were going to decline in growth. Nigeria was one of the top countries that had 3% growth in the second quarter. How many countries have 3% growth? Nigeria is growing. We are growing. Despite all the complaints and all the struggling inflation, the statistics that came out, just last week showed that the second quarter, Nigeria was one of the few countries that grew. We had a positive, I think, and not only was it positive, but 3%. The statistics there is just to say, see, listen. We feel that we are, we feel that we are poor. We feel that the economy is collapsing. Nigeria, there's a World Bank report that came out, I think 2-3 weeks ago, that warned Nigeria that, see, if you don't take care, in the next 6-9 months, maximum 1 year, your economy is going to collapse, completely collapse. And you're going to have massive crisis in your hands. Well, economists debated it, because we were pushing it here and there. My position was very clear. It can only happen if the political class does not forge a consensus before the election. And I hope that's what they want to London to do. You can allow the people on the street to shout and insult each other, but we know we're a class. We cannot allow Nigeria disappear. If Nigeria disappears, all of us as the ruling class, we are going to disappear. So it's not in our interest to push the Nigeria to the brink. And the statistics I'm giving you here just show that they are right. Nobody wants an economy of this type, as big as this, with so much potential to face existential threats that just comes out of what? I think that's the point I want to make there. That Nigeria is not a roadside economy. Although we try to characterize it like an economy, authoritatively, my country is not a roadside economy. We have the potential to build one of the biggest and most powerful economy in the world. China has done it. India is doing it. Most of the BRICS countries are doing it. We have absolutely no reason, given the resources we have, given the manpower, given the intellect of the Nigerian people, given that Nigerians are excelling all over the world. We have absolutely no reason not to excel with now. So we are not a banana republic that people can just wave off. But you see, in my own perspective, it is exactly because we are not a banana republic that the global power structure is determined to make sure that we remain at the periphery. That is my point. Okay, this slide simply again then tries to look at the migration, the Nigerian experience. And the first point makes that, look, Nigeria actually, traditionally, if you look at the data, we are really not we don't have a high migration ratio to population. Yes, Nigerians want to move abroad, yes, but if you disaggregate that data, most of the people who went abroad went for education. The education component of that movement was very, very high. And even up to today, I thought I was looking at a central bank complaint recently that says, even right now, the demand for foreign exchange for travels is basically from students, or people who are going out either for international seminar, one international training or the other, or they're actually going to, my timekeeper is telling me I better speed up, that my time is almost coming to an end. Okay, I will speed up. Okay, you can go through, these are basic statistics about it. The next segment, just as I said before, my concern is the weaponization of migration. Now, all the other material about migration, trying to find out, it's okay, it gives us an insight. But in our own case, we are facing a very, very serious problem that threatens the existence of this country. And our perspective as it relates to globalization and migration, it's not that, again, as you can see, there's a level at which I've sort of made it clear that people can migrate, people can go. If they get better life elsewhere, they get better living. If people in this country don't want to clean up the system that people will be comfortable staying at, well, if the internationalization of labor market, if they want doctors in India, not India, they want doctors in Britain, and I saw recently people are complaining, Nigerian doctors who are recruited by, of course, if Britain has need for your doctors, and you don't have a place for your doctors, don't want to treat your doctors well and pay them good prices, of course they should be able to go. That is the internationalization of labor markets that was not there before this epoch of globalization. Okay, so you train your doctors. The argument, however, is that if these doctors who are trained with social capital, if they are trained from everybody collectively trained, why should they go and offer their services elsewhere? But you notice that in this place, I don't know if it's the slide before this or after this, I made the point that Nigeria is the country with the largest amount of remittances from the diaspora. We get more money from people staying abroad, working there, than any other country in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa. So that doctor you are complaining has just been recruited in Britain. Believe you me, after 2 months, you'll be sending salary back to the village. So it's a two-way thing. The brain drain is there, yes. But when you are enjoying their remittances, remember that they are also remitting. What am I making of this one? Oh, the point I'm making is that the essence of this conversation is not to say that there should be no migration. This is my main worry. Many state and non-state actors are adopting human migration as a weapon for pursuing their aims. What does weaponization? There are different types of weaponization: infiltration, coercive, dispossessive, exploitable, fifth column, and economic. That's six types of weaponization. And again, you can expect that in my conversation, I'm beginning to argue that yes, that what I think worries me about our migration today is the weaponization. Using any of these methods is the weaponization. I make the point that if you look at what has happened in the Northeast in the past decade, it's general knowledge that most of the fighters were migrants. Most of the fighters were migrants. And all it takes is the massive build-up of army in North Africa. We're just there for anybody to pick. Interest other than that is national. Seize on that possibility. And because of our porous borders, we are able to be invaded not by a formal army, which our military is able to cope with. But we are invaded by a completely different type of army. No matter how you look at it, they are migrants. They are not Nigerians. And the principle of infiltration is that they come through they settle with the local communities. They settle. Some of them settle for 6-9 months. They understand the local community. They are arms come in. The clusters are formed by people who come in. And I think because my time is run off, I think we should interrogate this whole issue of weaponization of migration. The other thing is the traditional movement of pastoralists all through West Africa. All through West Africa, we notice of recent constant conflict between herders and transhuman pastoralists. There's nothing new about transhuman pastoralists, but not just in Nigeria, but the whole of West Africa. People are asking, why? Okay, there are economic reasons: desertification, increased use in farmlands, farming, building up urban areas that is now grabbing land and reducing land. There are contestations. That these contestations are natural. But people are wondering, why do we now see the level of militancy and the level of violence that is associated with this type of movement? That is the question. For me, again, my answer is that it is simply weaponization of migration, and that this is an outcome of global power relations. You might agree with me, you might not agree with me, but the increased weaponization of migration, it itself an outcome of the intensification of global power relations as it pertains the dynamics of the globalization process. Again, that is all for debate, but that is my, again, that page gives you just a little bit snippet about transhuman pastoralists. The conflict, again, everybody knows about the conflict. I'm just using it to show that the negative part, human trafficking, people are sold out and it's illegal, but as there is greater demands because of opening market, because people can now move, there are people who make it their business to make people move, to move people from one location to another. They traffic human beings, they make a lot of money. And these human beings, again, the point, if you read the literature of this, is that they also do remittances. So you lose them as humans, you get them back as money. Now, the political economists actually ties in all I've been saying. No? And it's just a repetitive of, in a more detailed form, how this relationship across board, affects migration. how the nature of the global economy, how the nature of globalization, affects migration, and how it has positive sides and negative sides, but how it has intensified the crisis, that migration is having, both on developed countries and underdeveloped countries. The markets are there. Globalization have done the internationalization of markets. And in US and Europe now, the fertility rate is declining. In a few countries, if they continue the way they are going, in the next generation, they have far less people than they have now. So they are having gaps. People must go there to fill up that gap. And they know that, because if you don't allow people come in, you discover that you don't even have people to do that, the so-called menial job you wanted to do, or to do even the regular job that should be done. So these countries are now being forced to open up the labor market. And they're even inviting people to come in, although they're very selective. The point we're making there is that globalization is opening up this avenues, opening up the labor market. But our complaint that the way the market itself is discriminatory. It's not the way capital, the same people who profess free movement of capital don't profess the free movement of labor, because they know what will happen. So let me just summarize by saying that as UNDP, global migration is here to stay and will even grow internationally. So there's virtually nothing we can do about human migration. People will still move. They'll still go through the Sahara Desert. They'll go to the ocean and sink. You can't stop us moving. You can't stop people moving. That is the point. Now, what we are saying though is that good and fine. If that must happen, let it happen. But you cannot get the best out of that movement if you don't check the basic conditions under which they move. You can't expect this to continue, because you say it has to continue without interrogating the logic of the globalization process, without calling for a new world order, without calling for a better management of the global system. You can't expect migration not to take the negative form it has taken. Mrs. Chairperson, I rest my case.
Wow, thank you so much, sir. This was a wonderful one. Very, very enlightening. We appreciate this, and I'm sure people are ready to address some issues. I just want to quickly say, maybe I should start by asking you the areas I want further clarifications. You talked about, sir, why capital moves, but labor does not necessarily move, something like that. I hope I heard you right, that capital moves. And I say, how can we reduce the movement of capital? Because it looks like, because capital can move, that is why most leaders in our country carry our money outside the country. I may be wrong, that's my thought. So how can we reduce the movement of capital to benefit us in Nigeria? And the second area I want clarification on, we have agreed, no, not clarification, and this is just a comment that, of course, that to reduce poverty, migration is a way, and it's a way also to share prosperity. I think I heard that quite right, that migration reduces effective way to reduce poverty and share prosperity. I say, so those countries that are giving our people lotteries and welcoming them, what we are calling brain drain, which for them we think is brain gain, I say, then it means we should say kudos to them because they are doing something good. I don't know your thoughts about this. And the second one I want to also remark on, the third one, sir, is that there was a statement you made. You said necessity to move might not be your choice, might not be yours, but the choice to move is yours. Necessity to move might not be yours, but the choice to move is yours. And I keep wondering, I couldn't really connect that way, because if there's a necessity, then it's not necessarily your choice. It is not mandatory you move. So for that statement, sir, I feel it is a bit contradictory, and I would want you to further clarify. These are my own concerns. Having said that, I want to open the floor to others to make their remarks. And I will start with our emeritus Professor Sogolo, who has his hands up. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Director. First of all, I want to congratulate the Center for giving us this opportunity of listening to a man who is so profound in an area in economics. I must confess, I'm not very good in understanding lectures on economics. So let me start with that confession. That is why if I now ask for some clarification, the guru of economics should not be disappointed at my not understanding those aspects. For instance, he's talking about migration being the most effective way of reducing poverty and spreading prosperity. And I say, okay, if that is the case, then can we now produce our manpower, spend our money, the nation's money, in producing manpower, experts, and so forth, and encourage them to migrate so as to spread prosperity all over the world? Would we think first about our own prosperity at home before thinking about universal prosperity? That is one of my areas of confusion. The second one is where the professor seems to suggest that the Nigerian economy is indeed progressing. And he's talking about, I don't know whether I understood that quite all right, that our rate of growth was high compared to many other countries in the world. But I thought, I had heard, in fact, that on a monthly basis, we are finding it so difficult even to pay the salaries of public servants. Is it that the government is not telling us the truth about the economy, or there's a conflict about the economy? If truly we are developing the way the professor has suggested, how come we're facing this kind of difficulties? And that's one of the areas that I would like to some clarification. And then the last part about the brain drain. You see, if the brain drain is an advantage, why don't other countries, why don't we attract equally the citizens of other countries and let them be coming into Nigeria, or why don't other countries such as the US, Britain, and so forth encourage their citizens to come to Africa so that they can gain the way the professor has explained? Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, I can see many hands up. Let me say the next person is our former Vice Chancellor, Professor Uba Adamu. And after that, Professor Neto, then Dr. Areji, and then Dr. Emina. Let's take it in that order. So over to you, sir. Professor Bada.
Thank you very much. I can see the grand old man again talking about difficulties in Nigeria, about paying salaries and so on and so forth. I'm in Bayero University now, and for the last 7 months, we have not been paid salary because we are on ASU strike, a strike that I fully support. And when I was the Vice Chancellor at National Open University, I resisted very, very strongly the idea of the university joining ASU. It's not just because we don't believe in the ideas of ASU, but because it will be disruptive to the nature of education we provide to Nigerians. Yes, we are very happy with what we did. Professor Kwanachi, thank you so much for such a brilliant presentation. I must confess, like Professor Sugolo, that I don't understand half of it because it is dealing with all this high polluting concept of power relations and so on and so forth. And it reminds me of ABU days when all those young Marxists who are no longer Marxists now, of course, they are super rich entrepreneurs and capitalists and vice chancellors. And so the arguments keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I just simply want to make an observation, sir. I have just returned from a holiday, as it were, to visit my daughter in UAE. And I noticed something that what you said triggered this comment. You talk about greed of capital, hegemony of capital. Now, I don't exactly understand what all this greed of capital and hegemony of capital means within the context of economic theories. But I just want to point out, and probably seek your perception on this. UAE has about 90% of its labor imported migrants. 90% of people living in UAE are migrants from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and so on. About 80,000 Nigerians live in UAE and they work there and so on. And it is, to me, the greed of the capital that attracted all these people to a particular location where they develop the society. Nigerians in UAE are well-behaved, extremely well-behaved. They respect law and order. And because they respect law and order, they are also respected. And like you said, that Nigerians are the highest earners, somewhere the most educated in the United States and so on. But in the United Arab Emirates also, Nigerians are doing extremely very well. A video was trending about a week or so ago of a Nigerian who lives in Dubai and sent some money home, and they built a mansion for him. And he came in and was thanking Jesus for this. So, sir, isn't the greed of capital a very good thing? Isn't the hegemony of capital a very good thing? Because that hegemony, that greed, that power relation between money and desire and needs of an individual, in the final analysis, contribute to the development of a political structure. And UAE is an example, in my view, of a classical greed, what do you call it? Greed of capital and hegemony of capital. It's classical. Like, that give you an example. You want to get married in UAE and you are an Emirati, you are marrying another Emirati, they'll give you a token contribution of $20,000, which is about 90 million naira. Just a token contribution, just to get married. So the greed of the capital acts as a massive magnet to attract immigrants and therefore contribute to the development of that society and creating a stable society. And those immigrants who come to UAE, and because of the lure of the greed of the capital, have now lived in a structured society. And when they go back to their countries, they live a structured life. So the final question, the final point I'm making, sir, is, isn't the greed of the capital a very, very good and attractive thing for migration to create stable societies?
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So Professor Aneto, over to you, sir.
I also wish to congratulate the lecturer for this lecture. In my own case, I enjoyed everything. I'm not an economist, I'm a student of science, but I think I got quite a lot from what he said. And part of what I wanted to say, Professor Sogolo has discussed, but I've decided to twist the question in another way. After listening to the brilliant professor, I made a construct, an equation, which I put this way, that globalization plus migration equals to an economic response, which may be positive or negative. And before he made this last contribution, where he passed a judgment that it is positive on the Nigerian economy, I had thought it was negative. So my question now is, if indeed it's positive, and like Professor Sogolo said, and I'm going to comment briefly on that, why is it that the economic benefits of prosperity, as it were, are not apparently evident? That's one. Then I would just want to illustrate with what happened when the Nigerian economy was much more buoyant than it is today. I do know, I did my youth service in a place called Darazo in Bauchi State. Before then, I wanted to serve in Jos because of the weather. But somehow I was sent to Bauchi, and from Bauchi, I was sent to Darazo. And to date, I thank God for what happened. When I got to Darazo, I was at Darazo General Hospital on the way to Kano, Maiduguri. And we found that it was actually an international community. The school, there is a school that has a boundary with the hospital, and there were many expatriates in the hospital and in the school. People came from India, from Bangladesh, from Morocco, from France, from Pakistan, name it. You know, so I was more or less in an international community at the time. Apparently, like you said, push and pull. Those people were pulled to Nigeria at the time because of the state of our economy. So that is an explanation. But the point I now want him to address is, how can we use this equation to impact on the standard of living of Nigerians? That is a kind of benefit from migration, globalization, and economic response. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comment and question. Now over to Dr. Areji, Dr. Okonkwo Areji. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Prof. I really enjoyed the paper. I have just two basic questions. One is on the weaponization of migration. Well, I wanted, or I hoped to hear more about how government policies could affect or help to organize, sponsor, or reduce such weaponization. In the case of Nigeria, what do you think? Is it an organized structural weaponization, or one that is situation induced by the hostilities between the herders and the farmers? That is one. Number two, in your slides, I just saw where you say that Nigeria had more than 1,600 and something entry points. I'll now ask, what is the work of the immigration in Nigeria? Is it a specified government policy to allow every borders to be open? For what purpose? Or does it mean that immigrations are only walking along the road and not in the border? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Areji, for that comment and question. And the last but not the least is Dr. Emina to make his point. Please, can you unmute yourself, sir? And after this, our presenter will respond to all. And then if there's any other one and there's time, we may take. Otherwise, we go to our WhatsApp page to continue. Okay, sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Prof, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you because you took us back a little back in history of the world economy and modes of production. But, you know, looking at the emergence of globalization for me, which you rightly trace back to capital and the other means of modes of production, with which over time, capital within itself was struggling, you know, which we can also refer to as thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Going by what you also try to drag our attention into what is going on currently in the world, China, the USA, and Russia also coming up. Don't you think that what is actually playing out will, at the end of the day, bring out a new world order? That's the first question I would like to ask. Because if we agree or accept the fact that globalization has brought the world together or very close, to an extent. Don't you think too, over time, globalization will also have a new order, you know, if the current order is not favorable to a particular region, you know? And lastly, you also allude to the fact that labor doesn't move, that labor is static. And then towards some kind of analysis, you also accept that professional labors migrate. So isn't that a contradiction in itself too, Prof? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. Yeah, now, Prof, sir, over to you to help us address the issues raised.
Okay, maybe because it's the last one, it's pressure in my mind. Let me confess that I just kept on listening to people. My wife at a point said, "Why are you not writing anything to respond?" You ask you to respond though. But I was enjoying the comment because that's what the conversation is all about. In the social sciences, look, there are, as you say, thesis, antithesis, there are ideas. No one idea is sacrosanct. That's why we have the conversation. I bring my perspective. You might not agree with the perspective. You have your perspective. I think the former vice chancellor was talking of that greed is good. Something about is greed not, should we not celebrate? I will come to that. So no, I was just listening and I was enjoying the comments. But let me start with you, just a technical position that I was talking of brain drain and at the same time, labor does not move. Okay, it's in context, right? First of all, we have segmented labor. The labor market is not homogeneous, okay? So like the labor market for doctors is not the same as the labor market for engineers. It's not the same as the labor market for cleaners, right? You agree. So the labor market is in itself segmented. Some are very mobile. Actually, that point, if I had time, the point I was trying to make is, these are people who did not want mobility of labor before. But why? Because they have refused to have children. They are now marrying man, is marrying man, so no children is coming out. They have all sorts of moral issues that they cannot expand there. Now they are begging people to come. You get the point. The fertility rate in Europe, in certain countries, is going to below 1. I know what it means. To have a fertility rate of less than 1, you know what will happen to your country in the next generation? There'll be nobody in your country. And they're not, so what they are doing, they are begging people, they are begging, please come, please come. The problem we have in third world countries is they are selective. They are biases. Again, as I say, look at Ukraine, they are fighting. Refugees are moving out of Ukraine, but have you ever heard anything about refugees from Ukraine? No. They have been absorbed very quietly. They are moving, they have been absorbed. There's no uproar. If it's another race, I don't know if race is the correct word. If it's another group of people, it would be a global discussion. Refugees are living in Ukraine. So for us in the third world, we are complaining that it's market, because what the theory says is that the market does not see. If I go to the market to buy yam, I don't ask you what's the person created this yam. Is he tall? Is he short? Is it a man? Is it a woman? Is it a Christian? No, I don't ask that. I need my yam. That's what we say in economics, that the unit themselves are homo economicus, which is centuries away from homo erectus. We are not homo erectus. Our brains have matured, have developed, right? So we don't like the situation where you have a segmented market and you say Canada, they're always advertising, come to Canada, come to Canada, And as Prof said, the UAE, Prof, please, if you can give me the reference, I will send my child there to go and get married so that he can get 20 million. So when I send him, he will send 10 million back to me. I didn't know that they were giving so much to send this. No, so just to answer your question, it's segmented, so it's not contradictory. Look, the market for doctors, virtually everywhere they're looking at doctors. But the point, I think, linked to one of the questions is, why should we train our doctors here and allow them to go? You see, that is the whole idea of universalization of morals and values, freedom, free enterprise, human rights. The government has paid my school fees to become a medical doctor, but the government has no right to tell me what I do once I become a medical doctor. If you do that, you are infringing my social or my human rights. You are denying me my right as a lawful citizen of your. So those principles are there and are respected. So the day you have your NYSC and there's a job waiting for you in Britain because they don't have doctors anymore, their children are not, they have the university. So actually, our people go there to study. It's not that they don't have spaces. They have spaces, but there are people who don't want to do the hard work of going into the medical school. And your Nigerians who are sweating it out 6, 7 also strike 10 years to become a doctor. And then you say, as a government, that they should not go to the market. No, the point I'm making though is that it is globalization that created this, globalization of markets. That before this time, the markets were closed. That's why they found that capital was allowed to move, but labor was not allowed. Every factor can move. I didn't tell you that every factor can move, and most people who have argued against neoliberalism, I say, see, listen, you are giving capital such a big pride of place, and you are demeaning labor. Of course, we understand why you do that. Why should a beggar come to your country and start begging in your streets? Why? Why would you be allowed to distinguish between a doctor and somebody who's a social liability to you? As a country, you have every right to say no. Look at what is happening in America. See, it's not that America does not need the Mexican labor. They need them because they don't have people to work in the farms. They don't. They need these people to come, migrate in at a point, do the farm work for them because they don't have labor to do the farm. But what are they afraid of? They are afraid of open borders. And that's what the extreme of this thing is. It's open borders. If you allow capital to roam the world, why don't you allow labor to? And that's what I made the point. If you ever allow labor to, the greed of capital is a two-edged sword. That's what I was saying. The greed of capital is a two-edged sword. It cuts this way, and it also cuts the other way. And it all depends on where you are. If it's going to cut against you, you will cry and you will die. If it cuts in your favor, you will rejoice and you'll be happy. That is the greed of capitalism. Now, that is why you have human beings. Again, it depends on what statistics you are listening to. There are human beings who are richer than all the countries in West Africa combined. One man, one family. One family. You have a man who is richer than, now they are comparing, when they publish this thing, they are comparing what will that man, please, Prof, just tell me, what will that man do with that wealth? What? It's greed. He has the wealth, he has to get more, he has to get more, but the problem with it is that in the process of getting more, he tramples on a lot of people. That is the point. I don't want to do moral economics here, but there's a branch we now call moral economics. And basically, moral economics is trying to say, look, yes, greed, capitalist greed, is the one that has generated a lot of this progress we have. Somebody is swatting at night to invent something, and you say you should not benefit from it. Of course, you have to give him patent. And that patent says, see, I'm the only one who can benefit from what I've thought of. So there's the literature that is very clear. You can't have capitalism without greed. But again, as I've said, it cuts both ways. There are people in this world, even in our country. Okay, somebody asked me about our country that is surprised that I'm saying the economy. No, and I gave you the reason why I made that analysis. I told you very clearly. I know people are suffering. I know there's complaints in the country. I know that. But you see, I was trying to make a slightly different point. What I was trying to do there is to tell you that Nigeria is a beautiful bride. That's what I was trying to say. And there are many people who are looking at the country. That's what I'm trying to. And what are they looking for? What makes Nigeria attractive to people to say, let's go there, let's stop them? Because if we don't stop them, they will take over West Africa. If we don't stop them, they are already bigger than South Africa. When South Africa came and took over Nigeria, people say, you see, but today, South Africa, with all their technology, with all their industrial base, still cannot grow their economy to be larger than Nigeria. There's something in Nigeria that people are angling for, they are looking for. But if you don't look carefully, you will not see. And again, I very clearly tell you, I'm one of those who are afraid of the existence of Nigeria within the next 12 months. I think we are facing existential threats. I'm one of those who very quickly tell you that, I tell that I agree. But I say, if we ever break apart, it will be because of our own internal follies. Let it not be because somebody from outside is pushing us down. That's actually my argument. If we want to kill ourselves and we separate, let it be because of our own internal follies. Okay, the movement of capital and labor, you know, and whether we that's actually the logic of the globalization process. They control the global process. If you say you don't want, if you say you want to reduce, then you better have internal discipline. Because the day you ever get into debt and you go to IMF for loan, that is when they will tell you, we have been waiting for you. You know what they did to us in the early 1970s? We were spending our money anyhow. They are cautioning us, be careful. We said no. But the minute we went to them for the IMF loan, what did they tell us? Privatize, structural adjustment. You must do this, you must do that. And every country that have gone to them for help, they've told, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this. So we really don't, so they are forcing capital on us, whether we like it or not. Do you know how much loans? Okay, I made this point about the economy now. Again, as I say, I made it in a different context. If I were talking to my class, I wouldn't make the point I'm making. Because yes, we grew 3% in the last quarter, but do you know how indebted we are? Do you know how we have been borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and tomorrow we are still going to borrow more? Now, but that is the political regime. This administration knows that in less than a year, about a year, they are gone. Somebody will come and carry the wahala. So they don't want the economy to collapse now, so they are willing to borrow. So you ask yourself, who is giving them that money? Knowing that they cannot even pay salaries. Who is giving them the money? Is the person giving them that money, is he sincere? Why is the World Bank still giving money? They are the same one telling us that we are going to face a potential threat in the next 6 months. Yeah, they are telling us they are ready to get 8 billion. They are ready to give it to us. So the point I'm making is that we should be able to calm down and critically look at what is going on, and not just take what is happening to our country at the face value. I like the UEA example. I'm still going back to the UEA place. Because if you have a country, I have not been to UEA, but I just want to ask the prof, can I charter a plane now, go to Kano, fill them up with Almajiris and fly them to UAE? Is prof still with us? Can you just answer me that?
Yeah,
Because
why not? Why not? Why not?
Okay.
It will just cost you about $30,000 to charter the flight to UAE. And they are looking for people who will clean their streets, who would clean their cars, who will take out their trash and so on. So why not do that?
So why are we not exporting those people? At least they will send some little money back to our brothers here. So I want a movement where after this lecture, I will go and ask people to please charter about six big planes. Let's put these people into the plane, just go and land them there. Let them start sweeping streets. They give them money, but they must give me 50% of whatever they give them there.
No, sir, it's not 50%. It's normally 70%.
Oh, they will give you 70%.
Oh yeah, why not?
I better set my business. I better set up my business. No, I agree with you that countries like that, even in Europe, it's not even you as I told you, even in Europe, because the fertility rate is declining, they are also desperately looking for people. But they are selective. If you are going to come, they want to be sure, where is this person going? Where is he going to fit in? Is he going to be useful? Or is he coming here and then who will be giving him social security? They say, we don't want anybody who are giving social security. If we need 2 doctors, we go to them and say, give us 2 doctors. If we need 1 lawyer, we go and say, so that is the way they are selectively getting people in. And they also, I think they also have this child bearing. I think in France, they also try to encourage women to have more children. And I think quite a number of European countries are beginning to put that policy in place, encourage the women to have more children. But, you know, when people have already made up their minds that they don't think it's their responsibility to bring up the next generation, you have to get the next generation from countries that are willing to give the next generation. So that is the, unless I say very pressing one, I think I've tried to, there are many questions, though I know, very interesting questions. If you still feel very distinct, if you WhatsApp me, I will respond.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for attempting to respond to all our concerns in this discourse. I must say it's been a very exciting time, and we really thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, at least for making us more educated concerning this issue of economic and globalization. Okay, thank you so much. I thank everyone who has spent time. We've been here for almost 2 hours now. If there are no more questions, well, we may have to allow our prof to take a break and rest, because he has really done justice to this topic, and we really appreciate him. And we want to ask that next time we need him, we know he will always be there for us. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate you. We thank you all for spending your time here this afternoon, even though I had expected more attendance than I saw here. But since this is recorded and it will go through our YouTube, and everybody will have access to this presentation, we have to upload it, and WhatsApp will be opened. The slides of today's presentation will be sent there, and people will look at it. And when they have any clarification, they will want to ask the prof. And I think we are going to put the prof straight to our WhatsApp group. I don't know whether I've done that before, but if not, I'll do that right away as soon as I end this discussion, so that you will be there to see the questions people are asking, if any, and able to respond to them. Thank you so much, sir. It's been a nice one. We appreciate you. We thank you all. And since there is no more hand up, we want to call it a day. And one more time to give the prof a final recommendation or advice to us concerning this economics and globalization. One more final word from you, sir, then we call it a day.
I think, first of all, let me thank the audience. Let me thank to everybody who has spent time, you know, in the middle of the day to come and listen. Again, as I say, I'm one of the few Nigerians who still feel that we have a lot of work to do. I feel that our country is facing an existential threat. I think if we don't all come together and put our heads together to try to straighten the rough edges, you know, of our policies, we might actually find ourselves, you know, falling off over the cliff. And I hope that that will not happen. I hope that conversations like this will make people come together, openly discuss some of the challenges that we are facing in this country, which is basically material and economic. And I think we want to appreciate the logic and dynamics of our society when it comes to the material base of our people. Again, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to have this conversation with you. I hope I'm available in future when there's any topic you think I can discuss with you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for that beautiful word, especially the one of availability. We really appreciate you, sir. Thank you. And Emeritus Professor, our former Vice Chancellor, they're always there to enlighten us more on any topic. We enjoy your presence all the time. Thank you. And thank you one, thank you all. So we call it a day, but we continue on our WhatsApp. Like I said, we're going to post the PowerPoint there so that people can access it and ask for clarifications. Thank you, sir. Have a nice day, sir. It's been nice listening to you. Thank you so much, sir. Bye-bye, sir. Bye-bye all.